What's going on there, Derry?
How you doing, man? All right?
Doing good. Hello, Crazy Witch. Hello, Nicole. Welcome to the show, everybody. So, yeah, we're rocking and rolling. Long time no see, brother.
Yeah, good to see you, man. Good to see you. Yeah, it's been quite a busy time. So, yeah, getting back into it now. And, yeah, lots to talk about, really. I've been... It just seems like recently there's been so much activity in this country, in England, in areas where I grew up, and maybe it's just because I've been my spare time is a lot of it is taken up of looking at kind of cryptids and everything, but it just seems like it's exploded. I don't know about you. You've been doing shows the whole time through.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Have you had much contact with the UK, or do you realize that there's a lot more activity? I mean, I think because of social media, obviously, but it's gone crazy. There's so much going on.
It really is. The problem we're having is twofold. Is that a lot of people... I don't know how to say this. I don't want to hurt people's feelings, but we have two categories, right? We have some people that think these creatures are warm and fuzzy, and they love them, and they feed them, and they baby them. And there's the other category where they terrorize these people in the country, and they tear up their property, and they're very aggressive. And I mean, I don't know how to take it.
The simplicity of a race of intelligent animals. You'll get one that is like human beings, I guess, more docile, more friendly, maybe. But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm always of the opinion, Chris, that we are the wild animals on everything that has happened. To our wildlife, to the areas that we live in, is usually down to human intervention. Why they maybe act like that, they're not a wild animal. I know because I run animal rescue centers. I don't run them, but I've supported them for a long time here.
Right.
And a wild animal is a wild animal. They're not cuddly. They're instinctively wild. Their main motivation is for food, is for mating and shelter. And I mean, I never think that Dogman or dogmen, dog people, I always, there's something that I think about, Chris, where I don't think they're actually they're like human beings. They're bad, they're good, but I think basically these things just want to either be left alone because of obviously their appearance, because most people will never see something like that in their lives. I think that they're pretty much like something that has been disturbed, like a race of people, you know, and humans are the worst. Humans are you know, they think they've got the right to be at the top of this kind of food chain, and so many hunters and people that have been out in the wild, they always say, I just realized that I ain't, you know, the guy with the big baseball bat. I ain't the gorilla in the room in this, you know,
Right.
situation.
Right.
You know, and I also get the feeling that from some of the encounters that I've listened to, that the dog people and the Dogman and the Bigfoot, they like usher you out of areas.
Yeah.
I'm sure they eat people. I'm sure they do. I mean, we do the most destructive things to each other as the human race that is possible. What we're doing on a daily basis. So I think they would have a healthy disrespect of humans.
Well, you brought an interesting point. Now watch this. I don't know if you can hear this. I'll turn my mic up, right? So it's going to give out. Alexa, how many missing people in the UK?
From globalplayer.com. It is estimated that around 170,000 people are reported missing each year in the United Kingdom.
Now, yesterday or 2 days ago, I checked that stats, and they said over 250,000 people in the UK go missing each year. Now, I checked the statistics. You all are on an island. Every 90 seconds, a person goes missing.
Yeah.
What in the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Now, Alexa, how many people are missing in the United States per year?
From Rovo.org. About 600,000 people are reported missing in the United States every year.
600,000 people in the United States.
Wow. That ain't 411, is it?
So,
You know.
What is going on? So now we can say trafficking, we can say murders, we can say people that go off the grid. We can dissect this, but ladies and gentlemen, let's get real.
Yeah.
You know, you did bring up 411. Now you did bring up people being attacked, and I mean, I don't know what's going on, but when you're talking about an island,
yeah,
that's the size of Texas and a couple other states of America, right?
Everybody, Chris, that comes to the UK, that goes to Scotland, which is like, there are areas of Scotland which are so vast, you would never even think that that would be the, I mean, you know, the classic American thing when I lived in California, and, oh, you must know Jane and Michael, you know, Michael's about 5, you know, they think the UK is, but it's, we've had this conversation before.
Right.
I go sometimes, where I live is very, very, very southwest. So really, I've only got to go 3 hours, 3 hours south, if that, and I am at the bottom of our island. Okay, and I could travel probably in one day from the bottom to the top, Land's End to John O'Groats, as we call it, and I can't remember. I think it was David Bunt who I've been trying to get on this program, but he's a slippery eel. He's had Dogman encounters where they've been coming down the trees behind him, and he didn't realize, upside down, head first, coming down.
No, I couldn't handle that.
Right, and he didn't know. His brother or his took a picture of him, and you know they're always taking. And yeah, and he's like, that's a Dogman coming down. That's in the UK. But he said, and it really hit a chord with me, because at the time I'm a musician. I was touring. I was doing Scotland, London, not so much in the south. But he said, all you see when you go on the highway, on the motorway, from most of the time you're on that motorway, the same as in most countries, all you see is farmland, open land. Obviously, you're going to get around the cities, stuff's going to get built up, but you don't go far outside those cities, and then it goes back into open land, forests. And I've said this I think I've said this to you. You go from, say, London to get the ferry to go to Ireland, which you go right up through Wales, and you're seeing lakes, you're seeing reservoirs, you're seeing huge forests, mountain ranges, which they are mountain ranges, you know, and Scotland is like Alaska. I could take pictures of Scotland and people, where's that? And they'd go, oh, that's probably North America. That's like Canada or the Rockies, or that's Scotland. It is wild. And then the migration route, they think that the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot, because we have them here. We have woodwose here. We have wild men. I know people that have seen them. I've showed you pictures, Chris.
Right.
A girl that didn't want to be, that has habitation. And as soon as, you know, it's like, you know, they're just being seen in these areas where it makes complete and utter sense. And now I know somebody that has having supposedly dogmen, a lot of dogman, dog people encounters. We're talking a supermarket car park that backs onto woodland. Now, most people, like, what was it who said, if you completely cancel out all the things that are completely unbelievable, that are completely nonsensical, you will usually end up with the truth. And you know, to think, like you said, we're an island, but then you flip it over the other side and think, wow, if those things were ever here, they're not going to go and get a ticket for the ferry to go to mainland Europe, or they're here. They're certainly in Ireland too. I know that for a fact.
Right.
There are areas there that, and I know that even around this area there are creatures. Deborah Hatswell, who we know, we've had her on our show. Fantastic knowledge that she has on everything to do with anything, pretty much the UK and everywhere else. You know, she had her own experience. We have you have Sky, you know, the Sky TV in America, satellite TV, you know,
right.
Had it for years. The UK's had it for like, you know, 20 years or whatever it is. But yeah, she was on the Sky TV program, Deborah, our friend Deborah, and relayed to everybody the experience that she had with a British Bigfoot. And on that program, there was probably 4 or 5 other people. Deborah might be tuning in now. She's a busy lady that had these experiences, and mostly women that had just had these, and they couldn't believe what they were seeing, what you know. And you know, you can see a credible person, as you know, with your background.
Right, that is correct.
Yeah, it's not rocket science to go, why would this person make this, you know, this insane story up? But the reason why this country is in a bit of a mess at the moment, I think most countries are not doing great, is because people just dismiss things like that out of hand, and that's the way their mind thinks. You know, that doesn't be, I haven't seen it, so it doesn't exist. You know that I've had a experience when I was 14, which changed my life, the way I looked at things. And I was brought up, my mother was always, we used to have magazines in the UK called The Unexplained. It was, you know, you built them all up into a folder and everything. And my mum was always interested in UFOs and the other side, and Sasquatch and stuff. I remember seeing the Patterson Gimlin film, and it was always around me. So then I had my own experience, and then like, you know, when the first person I told was my mum, because I knew my mum would understand.
Right.
And
right.
You know can you remember what her reply was? Don't worry, son. Don't worry about that, because I've seen him too. You know, and I'm like, oh my God. And then she told me the story. So maybe it's something that's in tune. Maybe it's ignorance is just the worst trait I can find in anything, and I think that these people are as maybe they've been here. I don't know. I don't really want to go down the route of evolution.
Right. But when I was looking at the statistics though of UK of missing people
That's
and
insane.
not finding the bodies.
Insane.
It is. And it's an island.
I didn't
I
realize
mean,
that.
and your government is not even blinking an eye about it.
No, it's not on there. It's not in their narrative to look into something which they probably know what is going on, to be fair. Like the US government know exactly what's going on with, I've heard stories about the dog people, or where they've gone into an area in Bigfoot and they've set up a kind of satellite dish, and and are they chipped? Are there ones that were hybrid? The whole, did they escape? Were they used for another purpose? Were they let out in the wild to fight the rakes? This stuff doesn't just pop up out of people's wild imaginations. There's just too much of it. And we know where to look, and we've looked, there's almost like there's something else going on behind it, whether it be UFOs, whether it be the UFO, the lights that people see that are connected to Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or whether there's, I can't remember if it was your show where there was a portal and this Sasquatch came out.
Yeah, that was one of my shows. Yes,
like a few feet off the ground and just popped out. I mean, you don't make. I've seen. I saw UFOs when I was about 12. There was quite a few of us in the middle of the night. We were what we call here, and we were just night fishing, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Really, I mean, it wasn't a hovering craft, 100 meters away, but there was no. We had older people there, younger people there. We all sort of congregated, and I just couldn't really understand what it was, if it was military, but it didn't move in any way that. Years later, when I was in California, I mentioned it to someone, and they said, "Yeah, that's what you saw." They do this maneuver, which goes quick and along the horizon or up to an apex, which whether they're interested in being undetected by radar, I don't know. We've all seen the UFO with the American Air Force, which is out at sea.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy, and then I think they scramble another couple of jets, and then this thing disappears, but where the coordinates of where it actually pops up is where their rendezvous point was, and it was something like, it had to be traveling 3,500 miles an hour to get. So it was a kind of, we know where this operation is gonna finish. And this UFO, or they call them something else now,
UAPs.
Yeah.
I don't know why they keep changing the names. It's not going to change the phenomenon, right?
No, but it pops up in the exact coordinates that was where their rendezvous point was, as a kind of, and there's a documentary on at the moment. Funny enough, my dad watched it. A couple of weeks ago, and he was like, I believe in all that stuff. Oh my God, it was in Africa, and it was a school, and they were all young, and
the UFO landed.
Yeah, and landed, and they were waving.
Yeah.
To them, and then it showed them when they were older, and they were all like, had doctorates, and they were all lawyers, and and the teacher, the head headmistress or whoever was very sort of sheepish, as we say, because she'd kind of like she might have been told, but you don't have like 30 children that see exactly the same thing, you know. That's and drew it, and maybe the teacher, if you saw it, was told to kind of, you know,
Right.
zip it up a little bit, you know, and then they showed her basically being a little bit sheepish that that she had you know, gone against these kids because, you know, you're weighing up. But now these kids were all older and they traveled. One was a lawyer in London, one was a doctor, one was a physicist, one was law enforcement or what, blah. And it was like, no, that's what we saw, you know. It's just so how many times are those things happening where they don't get reported, you know? I mean,
And that's the case. And I heard by Russ Kellett over there in UK that the UFO sightings are on the rise over there too.
yeah. I mean, a lot of it, I think, is down to the whole social media, the communication. Because I mean, I grew up in an era where you'd go and see a band, and no one maybe had a camera if you went to a festival, but now pretty much everything can be documented. But you imagine all that stuff, Chris, that has been going on before people could pull out. I mean, you see a cat in your garden, like I do all the time. We rescue stray animals all the time, and you want to film it, and you whip your phone out and try and film it, and it's 10-15 feet away. It's not like you're watching a Steven Spielberg film. It's terrible. You always have to open it up to see the cat's markings, or, you know, I mean, so it's all this there's a name for the sort of blob squatch type stuff, and
blob squab,
there's a name, there's some kind of, but you know, it just doesn't happen, you know. I mean, these people are like, this is like some huge creature like 20 feet away, and it just looks like a dark mass, you know. It just doesn't, it just, even as good as cameras are, it just doesn't happen. But we've got an area here in the UK which is called Cannock Chase. We were trying to get one of the guys who's written books on it, but he's got a young family, and he's probably going to be available at some point towards the middle of the month. So the area where I told you about the guy that was picked up by his ankles, they were like these kind of biker guys, and he had these like hand marks, 4 handprints, and a big bruise on his back, at the back of his leg, where this thing had just like picked him up. Something had picked him up and then dropped him. So
yeah, see, I couldn't handle that. I couldn't handle that. So, and even Anish is talking about, have you seen the holograms that they've been using about the whales and in Dubai and everything? Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, no way. So we had somebody on one of the shows, I'll show you the video, was talking about, they're like, my mom was talking about during World War II, I think, that they were using holograms to show pictures in the sky during the war. And I was like, what? I never heard of this. And on one of the national shows I was on, they showed me a video. I thought it was fake at first. And they're like, what would you do if you saw this? I was like, I would probably fall to my knees and start praying to God. Let me show you this video. Let me pull it up. And this is how good the technology is right now. And we know the military is 30 to 50 years in advance from us, correct?
Whatever they show us, it's their way, you know, way
right
ahead.
So I'm bringing it up. Let me pause it real quick and let me share my screen. Then I'm gonna blow it up. So there's a lot of conspiracy theories about 9/11 and some other stuff.
Yeah.
But here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Now, is that not crazy?
What is that?
Is that not crazy? That's holograms. That's what they can do right now. They're showing the public this is our technology.
So they can just basically show
Yes.
anybody.
So basically, they want to frame you for murder. They can show you across another country or whatever and show you coming out of an apartment building with a knife in somebody's,
Wow.
That's how far technology is. So they also have another show I showed that you could be here. And let me show you this one. Let's see if I can pull this up. And this is where I said it's going to hurt a lot of people in the cryptid world, and especially the paranormal. Let me bring up my Facebook account, see if I still have the video about holograms, and I say the politicians are already using it. And
you can bet your bottom dollar on that. Definitely, that is being used, and probably not for good.
Right.
But it's ominous, very ominous.
Isn't that crazy though? Watching that, the first time I saw somebody show me that on the national show, I was like, "Oh, come on!" I'm like, "There's no way." And they're like, "What'd you do if you saw that?" Well, if you saw people walking down the sidewalk, they didn't know what was going on, and they pulled out their phones and were like filming. They're like, "What the hell?"
But how did the one come out the water with all the?
Yes, and it looked real, didn't it?
It didn't look unreal, but how would they program that? I mean, it's just so precise and so, and a whale is an animal that is kind of, it's a whale. It's not a shark. It's, as much as I love sharks, I just had a terrible shark tattoo today on my, but it's a kind of a passive animal, a beautiful animal, of course. But do you know what I mean? It's not like they showed a jet fighter and a submarine coming out. It was.
Well, how do we know they're not using that technology to do that? Now, here's the other video. Now this is weird. This will flip you out. Here we go. Check this one out. Let me unmute the audio here. Let me pause it. There we go. Now let me hit play.
Industry is the ability to beam anybody from anywhere to anywhere in real time. So what we've decided to do was we shrunk these giant hologram stage apparatus from big arena stage pieces into what you see right here. This is Portal. It's the size of a vending machine. It fits in the corner of a room, and it beams in a 4K resolution image in real time. You can create, you can beam anybody from anywhere to anywhere in real time. And when you're looking into the camera, you're looking into your audience's eyes.
Notice it produced a shadow, too, of them.
Or if you're a politician, or you're a speaker or a religious leader, you could beam from the safety and security of your own campaign headquarters or from your own judges' chambers or wherever you are into anywhere that you need to be in real time. So I can distribute Portal hologram machines to any country in the world, and in real time you can beam from wherever you are into as many places at the exact same time. Each portal has an audience-facing camera, so that when you beam in front of audiences around the world, the camera sees the audiences. So I'm here with you right now. However, if I wasn't, I would still be able to see you.
Check. Now, isn't that wild?
Wow. I
mean, that's crazy. And so now we know this technology is available. So we know that they probably don't have to have that little box to recreate this.
Yeah.
Right. They're just giving us a demonstration.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably 20 years old. That
probably, at least, probably minimum.
And the whole thing about the lockdown and the pandemic was, it opened up all those possibilities of being able to, and so maybe they leaked that out. But I always think that kind of technology, I'm not a pessimist or a negative person, but I always think that there's some dubious use that the powers that be are using it for. I just, what do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I'm not going to go down Denise's rabbit hole.
No.
Because I can show 9/11 videos of how the building implodes and how the window explodes.
Yeah.
And I can show you how a building is demolished and how because the way a building is demolished, right? Or however you want to use the verbiage, it goes straight down, right?
Yeah.
Now, in theory, if an airplane or something hits a tower, a building, a skyscraper, right? And the way the metal, they said that it got hot enough, it twisted and turned and so forth. It is not in theoretical, or however you want to say it, theorize, going to come straight down. It's going to turn, twist, and fall and lean.
Yeah, it's not going to go bang, bang.
Right.
With a plane, which I think they actually tested a plane with that structure and the makeup of that plane going into a wall at 300 miles an hour. It disintegrated. There was nothing left. So at 500 miles an hour or whatever, it was just, like you said, it's a rabbit hole, and there's so much that doesn't. Yeah.
But so we know that the powers to be, and I don't want to say only the U.S. government, but let's say the UN, the United Nations, right? They have this technology. But if they have this technology, what about the people in the cryptid world, right? The paranormal world. So Microsoft has come out and they're releasing this software soon, I think this fall, to where they can take any paranormal video and strip it and see if you altered your video to put anything on top of it by layers. So now, if you're rich and famous and you claim you got ghosts, and they put the software and put your video through it, and they can debunk you now.
Really?
So now they're going to have fallout. Yes.
So you think that's going to separate the wheat from the chaff?
Oh yes.
Yeah, for sure. And rightly so. I mean, like I said, you strip away that quote was, you strip away all the improbable, the impossible, and what you usually end up with is the truth. And the truth is very, I think is very, the truth is nature. Things are just are there because it's a hard one thinking about such a being as I mean, you've reached out, and I think you've been in contact with Matt Johnson.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've seen his first encounter with his family on reenacted, and then the amazing journey that he seemed to go on, where he thinks he knows where they come from, and then I think he took a friend of his, and the Bigfoot ran towards him, and you could feel to all intents that there was a solid physical being running towards him, and then all of a sudden, and I mean, that is somebody I've come across that had this experience with a Bigfoot, and he was obviously, very concerned for his family, and then became, I guess, sort of obsessed, like you would be with where are these, where are they? I mean, what are they here for? How long have they been here? I know that they found some bones in a rock slide that they aged at 110,000 years old, and they were
wow,
femur bones and assorted bones it was a burial site for very, very large, 11 to 13 foot. You know, there was some that were 9 foot, some that were 6 foot. It was obviously a Sasquatch burial ground, because I believe completely that they bury their dead totally. What, you know, I mean, it's like, how often do you find a bear carcass in the woods? How, you know, I mean, I think we've got something, say, like 2 million deer in this country, and I drive a lot in you know, at night in the country when I'm coming back from places. If you want to see a deer, you'll probably see one, but very often you won't see one, and they're everywhere, supposedly, you know, in all these areas. So it's it would mean that, I mean, some of the visitations from the Sasquatch are just so incredible. It's like there's not really an in between. It's either a glimpse and that they had this experience and it took them a while to talk about it, or they've got a sort of semi-habitation with Bigfoot. I mean, where you are, Chris, I mean, it's like a hotbed around there every time.
Yeah.
Obviously now I always look at Lexington, Kentucky. I always look at just, you know, where you are, and you know, what the weather's like, and if anything, Bigfoot, Lexington, Kentucky, you know, the area, the Daniel Boone
Forest, national forest.
Trail. I mean, obviously, I think of a forest as like, you know, not like the forests are in America. You know, it's everything's on a smaller scale here, but everything's very. I was flying the other day out of Bristol, which is in the southwest of England, and I've heard of a story in a certain area of woods where 2 girls were sat down and they heard this rustling, and it's not that far from the city, the main road that drops down over the hill that goes into the city. There was a house for sale there, and it looked like something out of America. It was right in the middle of this kind of little bit of a forest, but the city is right there. They had an experience with a British Bigfoot, a woodwose. There, they didn't know what it was. It had a stick, and they're like, "Oh, who's that over there?" Just thinking it was somebody walking their dog or trying to find their dog or whatever. And it was this hair-covered man. It was definitely a man, they said, and it had a stick. It was pushing something into the ground, you know. And I obviously didn't expect to see anything like that. And that's like, those woods, you come straight off the main highway, as you say, and go. It's the main route into a major city, and it's right there, you know. And then but when I flew over the other day, I kind of there's those woods, because there's a big Ashton Court, which is a big country house kind of thing, and they have festivals and music there. And I'm like, that's. And I just looked at those woods, and they are dense and pretty big as well. You know, when you're on a plane going over, you sort of get a perspective of the size.
Right, right.
Anything could live in there, you know, and come out, you know, in the hours of darkness and do whatever, go through rubbish, you know. You know, it would be a blink of the eye, but I didn't realize how dense those woods were. And then they were bordered by the River Severn and the estuary there. But then the other side of the estuary was even more forest. And then the other side is where I'm from, the Forest of Dean, which is completely and utterly known as being, we've got wolves, we've got wild boar, we've got dogmen that have been seen there. So it's only going back to the human kind of infiltration where they've cut areas up. I could actually see from a plane the patchwork of, oh my God, all this was just ravines and forests and rivers. You know, it's like you know, the creeks, the forests. It's like in America, it just had everything. It was when you go into cities, like David Bunt said, and you go out and you're driving, it's 90% open fields, forests. You know, Britain is very capable of accommodating, I think, anything. You know, what does it matter? I'm 6 foot tall. What does it matter? Is it 3 foot taller than me? You know, it's not.
But the people in your pubs, though, out in the country, knows about these things. That's the kicker.
Yeah,
and they sit around and talk about it.
Yep, and the farmers, they know about it. They know what's happening to their livestock when they lose animals, or when they've seen their their horses, mainly cows, where they've had these sort of 4 slashes on their hinds. Like any big cat, any big predator will usually go either for the throat or for or bring them down, especially if there's 2 or 3. One will bring it down, the other will, you know. And you've got to put yourself in their position, really. What do they do when they know? There's a story about the in Wales, the Brecon Beacons, which again is not that far from where I grew up. You can see the Sugar Loaf and the Brecon Beacons. That's where the SAS train. There are areas up there that are restricted, and that is where it's a hotbed, that area. There's a name of a racehorse. Say his name's Silver Spur. It's called Silver Spur Lake, but it's not. It's named I think it's called Headhunter, and that was the name of the horse. Don't ask me why, but there's been big sightings there of dog people, and like I said, the SAS, which is pretty much our special forces here. That's where they train. So whether this guy, I think he probably was ex-forces, but he talked to a farmer, and they knew everything about it. They had weapons in the back of their Jeeps, which in England, if you see a weapon, it's kind of like, ooh, you know.
Right.
It's not the norm here. And cut a long story short, he got the impression, because he'd seen things, and the farmer was obviously very cagey, but sort of opened up a little bit about, you know, yeah, there are things here that, you know, we only talk about when we're together in a pub under hushed tones, kind of thing. And but he was totally aware that what was happening, and that's, you know, that's not wild. I mean, it's wild on the Brecon Beacons because the SAS train there, you know, because it's good for their winter training. I mean, it's pretty rough up there, you know, but yeah. The farms around it were totally they totally knew that these things were around, because they're not stupid. They'll look at injuries, they'll look at carcasses, the whole thing, and you know, it's not hard to put 2 and 2 together that some big predator, because we've obviously got the stories here about the beast of Bodmin, where there is a panther. My brother's seen it, my cousin's seen it. You know, and it's but he said underneath of the black fur is leopard spots. So maybe it's a hybrid, a throwback from when they had they put the wild animal. A lot of people that lived in sort of stately homes and things like that, they were eccentric or aristocratic. They had exotic pets, everything from, you know, a tiger to a leopard. Right. And then the law came in that these things were persona non grata. You know, they were to have licenses for and legislation and put into safari parks. So they just let them out, let them go into and in the Forest of Dean, going back to the Iron Age and the Romans, there was what we call scowl holes, which are basically free mining. And these caves systems and mining, they go for miles, absolute miles. You can get lost in those things. Nobody really goes down them. And I noticed when they placed, I think me and you were talking about it or seen it, when they placed in America the old mine map of all the mines in North America on top of the Dogman and Cryptid, sightings and experiences. It was almost identical. It was
Right.
there was too much coincidence there. There was too much fact there for it to be just a coincidence. There were lines where you could see. So maybe they, I know that the big cats in the Forest of Dean are known to live in lairs and in the scowl holes, as we call them. I mean, these things, people used to throw cars into them, and
Oh,
wait.
wow.
Wait for like 30 seconds and then hear boom, like motorbikes and cars if they wanted to get rid of them, So it's like we used to throw rocks down as kids, and and you hear one, it's hit the bottom, and then about 20 seconds later you're so they've been there since the Iron Age. In Britain, and then the Romans took over, and then there was tin and ore and and they're dangerous places, and not all of them go that way. Of course, they go that way. There are areas where you can go in at one side and come out like a mile later, and when not many people go in them, they're not fun places.
Right.
We were always told to stay away from them when we were kids, and they were only sectioned off by wire fencing. They weren't exactly inaccessible. Some were filled in, but generally, and they're everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere. Even where I am here, there are paint mines that go on and stuff. So,
Oh, wow.
So in America, I've seen places in Arizona, all over, where they have these mining systems, and people go into them, and anything could be in there, and it's cool. It's shelter. Going back again to what are they going to feed on? Are they desperate enough to take a human? I think they are. You're talking about the missing people. I couldn't believe that in the UK. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, and for the government not to be like, what's going on? We need to look at this and not making it publicly. Yeah,
No,
that is strange.
Yeah, I don't think they could make it. I mean, David Paulides with Missing 411 and everything that he's looked into, and the park services when he had a specific case of and some of those cases are pretty freaky. And they said that, it's going to cost like some crazy amount of money to give you all the information on, because it is about money at the end of the day. Then they're not going to bite the hand that feeds. They're not going to, game and wildlife, and in your profession, these people must be seeing stuff a lot of the time and getting some strange calls in, and
They have to be.
Of course. Yeah, of course. And the same here. They have to be, because I was at a meal with a friend of mine, which I came through Deborah Hatswell. Remember I told you the story about my friend that saw these, not far from here, these sort of 4 creatures, sandy colored, with flat faces, and on Deborah's map of the UK and Europe,
Right?
Because you always look at where you live. You always go, where do I live? Is anything been seen? And I'm like, oh my God, the flat-faced sort of gorilla cross lion things that just walked in front of their car, like 4 or 5 of them, I think, or 3 or 4. And the last one, as it walked sort of down over the bank, it sort of looked round at them. And I'm looking at the bottom, and this thing looked round at them as if to say, sort of, yeah, and what are you going to do? With the intelligence in it. And this is on Deborah's map of cryptid sightings. And And when I saw the name at the bottom, I'm like, I know that guy. I know that guy. So the next time I saw him, and he's a no ball guy, you know, like yourself, he's a no ball guy. He hasn't got a force bone or a lion bone in his body. You know, tough guy, good guy. And he told me the story. And then I was sat a few months later with a police officer. That was his beat, as we say. You know, that was his where he patrolled. He was a motorbike policeman, mainly. And I said to him, I said, Jonathan, I said, you know, you need to talk to Tam because he had this experience with these creatures and just weird. And I'm like, and I'm into all that stuff. And he was a very foolhardy. He is a very foolhardy, good guy, a nice guy. And he just turned around to me and said, I've seen things on that road out of the corner of my eye, like when I've started my shift either early or going home late at night, you know, and I couldn't tell you what I saw. I couldn't tell you what I saw, but I can tell you one thing, that it was big, whatever it was, and you know, and it weren't no horse or no cow. And he sort of left it at that. Really.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
And he also, every time he was around that area and a little bit further, because you're on the moors then, you're on like American Werewolf territory, because that was all filmed in the Brecon Beacons, Wales. Wasn't in the, and he said, the amount of times, he said, probably only on my hand, he said, when I've stopped, but I've felt eyes beating into me, he said, and I know enough that if there's people around, he said, but this was like, there weren't any people around, he said, and I just felt like I was being watched, he said, and I don't get that that vibe, that feeling, you know, all the time, but when he said, and it was always in these certain places, literally along there, he said, I just felt something was like nudging me, going, just sort of get out of here, you know, this is a police officer, you know,
right,
doing his rounds, you know. So yeah, and he is a kind of no nonsense guy either. He said, but I felt these kind of like eyes burning. He said, I could never put my finger on it. He said, and then it wouldn't happen, and then it would happen again. He said, and it was just like, you know, that same kind of feeling. So, you know, I mean, it's we're in between Dartmoor and Exmoor, which is two huge moors. And I told you the story about my other friend who was ex-forces, who they do these wild camping trips where they'll say, oh, we'll make a 3-course 5-star meal, and they'll go up, and the weather, they don't do it in the summer. Basically, they'll just go, right, tomorrow we'll go and cook a 3-course meal on a moor. We're not going to take a tent. We're going to wild camp. We'll find, you know, that their shelter is a wall with a piece of tarpaulin going down to the ground, and they'll sleep in that. And he was up on those moors, and I said to you before, and I said, what was it like then? He said, there wasn't 1 minute through a certain part of the night between 2 and 5. So maybe 2 and 4:30. It was almost like everything coming where we couldn't hear like something on the wind, like almost like talking or some kind of chattering or some kind of movement. He said, we were freaked. He said, there was nothing up until, and all of a sudden around 2 o'clock, it was like the floodgates opened up, and there was, you know, he said, and he's like, I'm never going up there again. Where they went, and
wow,
he'd been up there before. He said we could hear stuff on the wind, and then that's right. They sort of broke it down, and they went and stayed in what they call like a croft, which is basically a pigsty out in the middle of nowhere. You know, it's just a sort of stony, roughly built area where you can get a bit of shelter if the weather's bad. But yeah, they wanted some. They wanted some stone in between them, I think. But That's, I mean, I'm like, what do you expect? That's Dartmoor. There's a Victorian prison up there where people have seen stuff. Lags, as we call them, people in jail have seen things out of their jail windows where something's been throwing rocks up into a tree, and then something's obviously fell down out the tree, and this sort of being, as you know, in the moonlight, has kind of scuffled around, and they're like, but it just looked like someone that didn't have any clothes on, but had like a fur coat on, or you know, just weird. I mean, but it is a very, very weird vibe up there. Princetown, which is where Dartmoor prison is, which is an old Victorian prison. I mean, and it is. It's like, and it's right up on top of the moors, so you ain't getting out of there. It's really, you can actually go and visit it. So when you come over, I'll take you up there because you'll love it. It's proper old English, you know, everything about it. It's you know, you get put in Dartmoor, you've been a naughty boy.
Oh Lord.
You ain't going nowhere up there. But yeah, the guy, I think, was done for like fraud, and he explained it to his brother, and then his brother put the story that he'd explained to him on one of the sites, maybe it was Deborah's, where he just saw this wild man that he thought was just a lag, as they say, another inmate just that broke out and wasn't going anywhere and was just, you know, he said, but it was obviously trying to get something out of the tree. So it was probably a roosting pheasant. And he said, and then as it went out into the moonlight, this thing looked like it had like a fur coat on, like fur and covered in fur. And then he's like, this is just not right. This is not right. And I don't think he had long to go. I think he was, but then every night after that, he was at his window watching to see if he could see anything, you know. But and that was probably about 2 or 3 miles from where I was just saying about my friend, where they did their wild camping. It's all up there, Princetown. I've cycled all around there, and I wouldn't want to be up there at night, to be honest with you. A lot of the dad calls it the Badlands out there.
Yeah, if you call it the Badlands, there's a reason why. So yeah, I'm good.
You've got Bodmin Moor as well, which is down in Cornwall, where they've got the Jamaica Inn, which is a very famous Daphne du Maurier book on all the smugglers that would all meet at this pub inn on the moors and divvy up all their ill-gotten gains, where they held up the lamps and brought the ships onto the rocks and then killed all the sailors and, you know, robbed and stuff like that. There's a lot of folklore and a lot of history down there, and that place is completely and utterly full of ghosts. Absolutely, the Jamaica Inn, yeah, and it's in the middle of nowhere, like on Bodmin Moor. It's you know, the Daphne du Maurier film, which is an old black and white film, is fantastic. You know, it's really like, you know, just smugglers and pirates and people that, you know, there's a name they've gotten where they put the lamps up and bring the ships into the onto the rocks. But that place has got a lot of ghosts, definitely. It's just, you know, it goes with the area. There's another pub which is full of ghosts as well, called the Highwayman. The Highwayman. And it's, the whole pub is built around like nursery rhymes, like the old woman that lived in the shoe and everything. And people have walked in and it's all little kind of rooms and alleys, you know, just higgledy piggledy, as we say. And like people have walked in there who I know, cyclists, and gone into the bar and said, "Oh, have you got a fancy dress going on tonight, like some kind of party in there?" Well, there's a guy stood in the foyer, in the hallway there, and he's dressed as a cavalier. There ain't nobody in here dressed as a cavalier. And they've seen, he's like, "You've seen the ghost, the cavalier ghost, when the Roundheads and King remember what king went, Oliver Cromwell, and the British Civil War was going. So many of those places, you toss a coin, whether they're for the crown or for Cromwell. It's a lot of bloodshed. And my uncle saw one as well, a cavalier with a big feather. And this guy's just stood there, as solid as me or you. And he's like, all right, mate. And just walked in and thought, oh, where's the party tonight? You know, the fancy dress. And like, there's no one in here. Oh, but you've seen him. You've seen the cavalier. Yeah, he just stands there. He doesn't say anything. So there was a young man, you know, just. So that's that area. And then it just goes. The list of those moors out there just goes on and on and on. And so you've definitely got the sort of black beasts. You've definitely got the woodlouse, which is the British Bigfoot, 100%. You've definitely got supernatural. You've definitely got paranormal. You've probably, if you want to spend much time out there, and I've hiked out there a few times, and it's not the place to get lost either. It's they have this kind of grass that seems to, like, if it makes sense, it's like this thick moss grass that seems to cover about 3 feet of water. It's almost like there's like an underground water table, which obviously there is.
Oh yeah.
But it's hard to cross and treacherous. You know, the whole jack-o'-lanterns thing, and like I told you about my friend that saw that kind of horse-haired covered being looking up at him. That's all there. That's in that area. You know, so it's just inhospitable place. You've got to keep your wits about you. You don't get lost out there on those moors, because it's you know, it's the same as anywhere. The weather comes in like that, and if you're not prepared and you're not you know, equipped, then it can be it can be fatal out there. You know, people think England, you know, there's going to be somebody around the corner on their bike or, you know, or whatever, and nah, those moors ain't like that. Bodmin Moor, Exmoor, Dartmoor, and they're all kind of almost connected, and the land in between is all. But that is as well near the area at the top of it where I told you the story about the guy that was doing some work for a farmer, and he could see these shadows of people. When he said to him, "You leave them be. We don't mess with them. They don't mess with us." That's the woodlouse, basically. And you could hear him whistling and stuff. And the guy came and he was working for and took a couple of the people back, and he carried on doing his thing until he came back and picked him up in this like buggy thing. And he said, "Who are these? I can see people up there, you know." And that was when he said, you know, "You leave them be. They don't mess with us. They've been here a long time. They've been in a lot longer than us. You know, you leave them be." So he completely knew about it. And it was obviously British Bigfoot, woodlouse, wild men. Not far from the picture I sent you. Remember the eye?
Right. Yeah.
It's turning. And the girl didn't really want to sort of elaborate on coming on the show and everything, but she gave me permission to show you that. I mean, what is that, Chris? It's a face, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's an eye or two eyes. You can actually see the mouth and the nose. And I enhanced it, but she just caught it, and she said the same thing. And that's near that area and near the airport, the old RAF Newquay Airport, where the guy said that he'd been on 6 Air Force bases in the UK. He said that was the only base there, St. Magdalen, I think it's called, where even if they went to the toilet, they butted up. He said it was just, you know, something was around that, and that's literally on the doorstep of where that girl sent me those pictures. It's literally just about 2 miles the other side. So what's down there? And she said that they had a massive spoil heap. You know what a spoil heap is? Like basically, if they've done building works or farm works, they pile up a load of dirt in a sort of, I don't know, 10, 15, 20-foot mound. When the farmer came to move the spoil heap, she said that they were very active while the spoil heap was there. And she had an idea of where they were, and it was a cave. It was an old mine, because Cornwall is totally famous for tin mine. They supplied tin to the Romans, you know?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Totally goes way back. And, 2,500 years, they supplied tin for their armor, tin for whatever they needed. They traded with them, and Constantinople and the Far East. Cornish tin. You can still see a lot of the old tin mines 10 minutes from here. And she had an idea that that's where they were, basically. And I can't remember if it was their pet dog that chewed they had a young daughter, and they always seemed to think that these things would be very inquisitive when the children were playing. And the young daughter had a ball that the dog had chewed, and all they were doing, oh, don't worry, darling, don't worry, it's only a 3 or 4 year old. I'll get you another ball. Don't worry, I'll get you another ball. Oh, my ball, the dog. The next day, a ball that had nothing to do with the family was in the front of their garden, put on their porch. And it wasn't a new ball, it was an old, but it was put on their porch. And she explained that to me. She said, I don't know what else could have put it there. And the dog wouldn't touch it. The dog wouldn't go anywhere near it as well. Dog was wary of it. So whatever put it there.
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild.
Like they must have been talking. Maybe it was here listening, but she didn't see it. But her eldest son, I think it was a son or a stepson, saw she had a name for him. She had a name. Oh, like the Watchers, she called them, but it was a bit more friendly than that. What was it called? But she said that the son came out of his car late one night, or the stepson, to come home, and he saw the figure standing there, and sort of got into the house and was there. And she's like, look, and that was the same picture that she let me show you, with it's a face. There's no other, what else could it be? It's quite a it's a quite apish face, isn't it? You remember?
Yeah.
It was, it was sort of, and you said it was turning. And
it was turning. Yeah,
turning. So the original picture that was enhanced was, the biggest skeptic in the world can just look at that and go, that's a face. That you can see the outline of the nose, you can see the slit for the mouth, very thin lips. I noticed on a lot of pictures that people show of Bigfoot or Sasquatch, very thin lips, and the kind of eyes are a little bit and a pronounced forehead, and just amazing. I mean, like I said, she didn't want to come on and explain, but I always get permission. Obviously, it's just common courtesy if people want to share their stories, and I did ask if I could show you it, and she was pretty cool with that. So if there's one, I don't know how many she said there are, but if there's one, there's two. If there's two, there's three. If there's three,
oh yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that concept.
And I think some of the sightings where and I find it fascinating where it was definitely a female, definitely a male, and there were two young ones there, So
right.
it goes back to that thing where, you know, they're just trying to do their thing, and we're encroaching all the time on their territory. You know, if I was them, I would have a healthy disdain for the human race. If I was an alien coming to this planet, I would have, you know, obviously there are good people here, as we know, but I would have a healthy, I'd be like, you know, they're not helping themselves much, that mob on Earth, you know, they're, and it goes back to maybe these creatures were the original creatures that was here. Maybe we were placed here as Caucasian, black, you know, maybe we were just another race that some other alien species or, you know, civilization put us here, you know, because the gaps in the Darwin theory and from, you know, like, you know, even Bigfoot and stuff and bears. And when you look at certain animals, it just, none of it seems to make sense, does it really?
No, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. No, it does not.
It's all a bit yeah, fascinating. And it's, you know, it's always fascinating to meet people as well that have had experiences. And there's a place in France as well that I've just researched, which is on the border of Italy, which is about 35 minutes actually from where we're going to be staying, and they've had 3 mainly Dogman. It's a small village, because don't forget, an hour 40 minutes from where Nice, the city of Nice is, you're in the mountains, and I'm talking mountains. I'm talking mountain ranges, not just, you know, the little, you know, this is like, this goes out to a vista, which is just like the Grand Canyon. You know what I mean? It goes way, way, way out there, right up until,
Right.
You know, like the Pyrenees, you know, and there's a lot of villages, you know, I've flown over there quite a lot and looked down and thinking, man, that is wild. It's got rivers going up through it. It suddenly just turns into this kind of like, you know, beautiful, like, wow, yeah, mountain ranges. And it is. I've been cycled around quite a lot of it. Not a lot of it as in a lot of it, but what I've seen has been, you know, it just goes on and on and on and on. And then you're going into Europe, you're going into Italy, and then you're going further on out. I mean, there ain't much landlocked there until you get to the tip of Russia, you know, and then you're going into Japan. It's like, you know, anything could be, could habitate that kind of vastness of area that is, you know, Western Europe. It's you know, so much bigger than the United States, and it's all kind of.
I hate to see what exists in there.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, the Black Forest in Germany, I've listened to encounters, Dogman encounters, different stories where Sweden, Norway, Finland. I was in touch with a girl that was in Finland that had experiences where their parents had, because a lot of people in Scandinavia, if they're sort of middle class, they will have like a cabin out in, you know, I'm not saying they all have it, but and this thing was and she locked herself in and called the police, and the police took like, you know, 8 hours to get to her, but the police totally knew because they'd had other reports about this Dogman creature. She said it was on all fours, and I didn't think there were wolves down this far, but then it did the strangest thing. It stood up and came and was looking through. They had a big glass window, and it was looking through the window, like tapping on the window. And she
yeah. I couldn't deal with that. I couldn't deal with that.
She couldn't. No, she calling the police, but when the police turned up, it was kind of like, you know, they weren't, you know, it was like they knew that, you know, oh, he's been around again. You know,
so Stanley Stones wants to know, has the Dogman been around forever, or is that something new?
you can look at you know, is it an Anubis or a new Anubis?
Yeah.
I think that all these cryptids, and I think they're better off calling all these races have been here a long, long time. If you've got Sasquatch, Bigfoot bones of 9, 10, 11, 12-foot creatures that are 110 dated to like within 1,000 years, but you're still talking 110,000 years. Okay, you know, the Romans were only here like 3,000 years ago. Before that, you know, the Dark Ages, blah blah. We're only talking our own history is only 3,000 years old, really. You know, 4 maybe. You know, to be it into a more modern age. So when you're talking 100,000 years, then I actually think that they were probably the first creatures on the planet. I think the whether the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot, through Native American beliefs and whether they interbred with some, or you know, what's to say, you know, we've got Chinese people, we've got Asian people, we've got black people, we've got white. What's to say that there were not as many races of these type of creatures, different kinds, smaller ones, bigger ones, blah blah blah, then you know, more remote tribes of them, which is a good word, tribes. What's to say that, you know, what do we know about this planet really about the human race more than sort of 30,000-40,000 years ago? Only you know, relics and, you know, what someone can date. So I think these creatures have I might be completely wrong, but I got a feeling that they were seen. I mean, there are cave paintings from over supposedly 10,000 years ago.
Right, that's true.
You know, and the Egyptians, who were a very intelligent, their philosophers were all a very intelligent race of people. They were as natural to them certain things about the spirit world that was just like life, just like breathing. So I think until we not achieved, until we got into a civilization where the powers that be want to shape our minds and the narrative to a certain channel, I think all this stuff was just as natural as me picking up that pen. You know, it was just a given, don't you think? That these were there. You know, the Native Americans, you know, these things were, it was their world, you know, the skinwalkers and whatever they called, and, you know, and the same as British history as well. You know, they all believed in certain things that were just there. The Green Man, you know, elves, or, you know, the more spiritual things that only a modern civilization and the modern world can kind of knock it out of people, you know. And it's stupid that it's switched round now, that the people that believe in those things are almost ridiculed to a certain degree by the masses, you know, where, you know, it's a loss of spirituality. I think that I've seen one thing, two things in my life where I can't discount anything. I can't be ignorant about anything that I think doesn't exist. And I think that's how people should be. It's just open-minded, isn't it, really?
No, that's the way we have to be anymore these days, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So what's on our journey for the next show, boss?
I've got to get nailed down David Bunt or Johnny Elliott, and then I've got another person who I want to do a whole thing on Cannock Chase, which I've been putting together. So we'll give it a go. I'm away next week in France, so a couple of weeks, and I'll nail these guys down. If I got to tie them down, I'll nail them down.
I know how it is when you're busy, brother.
No, that's cool, man. It's the next couple of weeks. It's just been it's just been hell. But it's great to see and yap on.
Yeah, we'll get it, man. We'll get it, brother. We'll get it. We're gonna rock it. Another one in the hose, ladies and gentlemen. Derry from UK. Bring it on, man. So hopefully you enjoyed the show today. Broadcasting from the United States, out of Kentucky, ladies and gentlemen. Derry from UK. We'll catch you on the flip side, ladies and gentlemen. Take care. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Rock it on, Derry Van. Be safe. Until next time, Godspeed. Bye-bye.
It's a grizzly.
Should we get out of here?
No, we're gonna watch and listen.
Action.
It's a grizzly.
Oh, shit, should we run?
No.
Action.
It's a grizzly.
Oh, should we run?
Okay. It's a grizzly.
Are you sure it's not a chipmunk? Action. No, I'm out of here. Action.
It's a grizzly.
I'm out of here.
Huh. Maybe it is a chipmunk. It's a grizzly.
Are we gonna die?
I don't know. We're just gonna sit here and listen and watch.
Let's get out of here, maybe.
Fall!